We often look to the past to understand ourselves. Tonight, we turn our attention to the year 1894 and the solemn story of Alice Pitezel. It's a case that reminds us that behind historical records are real people, whose lives were irrevocably changed by the events that transpired. This is their story, as best as it can be told. The story begins not with a crime, but with a partnership. Benjamin Pitezel was a carpenter, a man of modest means, with a wife, Carrie, and 5 children. In the bustling, optimistic atmosphere surrounding the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, Pitezel fell into the orbit of a man who seemed to be his opposite in every way: the wealthy, charismatic, and endlessly ambitious Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. Pitezel became Holmes's loyal associate, a trusted handyman who seemed completely captivated by the doctor's charm and grand schemes. It was a fateful association, one that would lead the entire Pitezel family down a path of unimaginable darkness. By 1894, H. Holmes was a man in need of money. His elaborate financial frauds were catching up to him, and he devised what he believed to be a foolproof plan, with his loyal friend Benjamin Pitezel at its center. The scheme was a classic insurance fraud. Pitezel would take out a $10,000 life insurance policy on himself. Then he would fake his own death, using a disfigured cadaver obtained by Holmes to stand in for his body. His wife, Carrie, would identify the corpse, collect the handsome payout, and the money would be split. To the Pitezels, a family struggling with poverty and Benjamin's alcoholism, the offer must have seemed like a lifeline, a devil's bargain that promised to solve all their problems. They agreed to participate, unaware that Holmes' true intentions were far more sinister. In September of 1894, the plan was set into motion in Philadelphia. Benjamin Pitezel traveled to the city, waiting for Holmes to procure a suitable cadaver. But Holmes had no intention of finding one. Instead of staging a fake death, he planned a real one. In a rented property, Holmes rendered his partner unconscious with chloroform. He then poisoned him with benzene and set his body on fire, staging the scene to look like a tragic laboratory explosion. He summoned an unsuspecting Carrie Pitezel to identify the horribly disfigured remains. Overcome with grief, but still under Holmes's spell, she confirmed it was her husband. The insurance fraud was now a murder, and Holmes had successfully eliminated his partner while gaining a grieving, pliable widow who believed every word he said. With the $10,000 insurance payment secured, Holmes embarked on the most chilling phase of his plan. He approached the distraught Carrie Pitezel with a fantastic story. Benjamin was not dead. He was in fact alive and well, hiding out in London to escape his creditors. The body she had identified, Holmes claimed, was the cadaver after all. He told her that for the ruse to work, she could not see her husband yet. Instead, Holmes would take 3 of her 5 children, 14-year-old Alice, 11-year-old Nellie, and 8-year-old Howard, to be reunited with their father abroad. Trusting the charismatic doctor who had been her husband's closest friend, the desperate mother agreed. She handed her children over, believing they were going on a great adventure to see the father they thought they had lost. For Alice, Nellie, and Howard Pitezel, the promised reunion with their father never came. Instead, they began a bewildering and frightening journey with H. Holmes across the American Midwest and into Canada. For weeks, they were moved from city to city, from one rented house or hotel to another. Holmes masterfully manipulated the children, forcing them to write letters to their anxious mother, letters filled with cheerful details of their travels and reassurances that they would soon see their father. These letters were a crucial part of his deception, serving to placate Carrie Pitezel while he traveled with her separately, often keeping her in a city just miles away from her own children, whom she was never allowed to see. The children were now his captives, pawns in a cruel game whose rules only he understood. While Holmes juggled his captives and his deceptions, two forces began to close in on him. The first was Carrie Pitezel's mounting anguish. The constant excuses and delayed reunions with her husband and children frayed her trust, and her anxiety grew into suspicion and fear. The second was the Fidelity Mutual Life Insurance Company. Unconvinced by the circumstances of Benjamin Pitezel's death, they hired the renowned Pinkerton Detective Agency to investigate the claim. The case was assigned to Detective Frank Geyer, a determined and methodical investigator. His initial task was simply to find proof of insurance fraud. But as he began to untangle Holmes's web of lies, Geyer soon realized he was not just hunting a con man. He was searching for 3 missing children. Detective Frank Geyer's investigation became a relentless cross-country pursuit of a ghost. He painstakingly retraced the steps of Holmes and the Pitezel children, a journey that took him from Cincinnati to Indianapolis, Detroit, and finally across the border into Canada. Using hotel registries, rental applications, and interviews with shopkeepers and neighbors who remembered the handsome doctor and the 3 sad-eyed children, Geyer pieced together their tragic odyssey. His search eventually led him to Toronto, to a small, unassuming house at 16 St. Vincent Lane that Holmes had rented under an alias. As Geyer stood before the house in the summer of 1895, he felt a growing sense of dread. He knew the children's journey had ended here, and he feared what he would find inside. With permission from the property owner, Detective Geyer and the Toronto police began a thorough search of the house. After hours of fruitless searching, Geyer's attention was drawn to the earthen floor of the cellar. He noticed a section of loose dirt and ordered his men to dig. Just a few feet down, their shovels struck a makeshift coffin, a large travel trunk. Inside, they made a horrific discovery. There lay the bodies of Alice and Nellie Pitezel. They had been asphyxiated, likely by a gas pipe Holmes had fed into the trunk. The discovery was heartbreaking, confirming the detective's worst fears and revealing the true depths of Holmes' monstrous nature. 2 of the missing children had been found, but the fate of young Howard was still a terrifying mystery. The search was not over. Detective Geyer knew from his timeline that Howard had been separated from his sisters before they reached Toronto. He backtracked along the trail, following a lead to a house Holmes had rented in Indianapolis suburb of Irvington. There, in the chimney of a large kitchen stove, Geyer made his final, grim discovery. Among the ashes and debris, he found a small collection of human bones and teeth and fragments of organs that had been preserved by the heat. They were the unmistakable remains of a small child. Howard Pitezel had been dismembered and burned. The nationwide search had come to its tragic conclusion. Frank Geyer had found all three of the missing children, exposing a crime of almost unimaginable cruelty. H. Holmes was eventually apprehended in Boston in November 1894, initially on an unrelated warrant. With the evidence of the Pitezel murders uncovered by Frank Geyer's brilliant detective work, Holmes was extradited to Philadelphia to stand trial for the murder of his partner, Benjamin. The 1895 trial was a media sensation. The testimony of Carrie Pitezel and the heartbreaking letters from her children sealed his fate. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Before his execution in 1896, Holmes confessed to numerous murders, a chilling epilogue to a reign of terror. But his legacy is most poignantly remembered in the story of the Pitezels, a family destroyed by their trust in a man who was the embodiment of evil. Thank you for spending this time with us. Reflecting on these past events is a way of remembering the individuals involved and the impact their stories had on their communities. If you have any thoughts on today's case, we invite you to share them respectfully in the comments below. We hope you will join us again for our next true crime case.